Hi everyone. In this lesson, we're going to sketch out our ideas for an earbud holder, a device that will hold on to our headphones so that they aren't a tangled mess while we leave them on our desk or in a bag somewhere. We're going to take a look at the type of headphones that we've got. I have some earbuds that have a round area up here with the actual part that goes in your ear, and the wires go down and around and up to the plug. So we're going to need to hold on to both sides of our earbuds and have something to hold on to all of this mess of cords so it doesn't get tangled in a knot. So the first thing that we'll have to do is measure the things that we want to hold on to. I know that the plug at the end of the headphones is 3.5 millimeters. And measuring the widest part of my earbuds here, I get 12 millimeters. So we're going to need a couple of holes that we can fit these into. And just to make sure that everything fits and doesn't get stuck, because plastic can expand some, we're going to make our holes 0.5 millimeter bigger than our measurements. So I'm going to need a small hole to hold the end of the plug, and that is going to be 4 millimeters. And then 2 larger holes that are going to be 12 and a half. And then some part to wrap our cable around. Now, since we know our measurements, we could be very simple and make ourselves a rectangle with some holes in it, a little area here, and then we can insert things into the holes and wrap the cable around our middle part. That would be a perfectly usable device. I think I'm going to try to make something a little more fun with it. And since the earbuds by themselves look a little bit like eyeballs, I'm going to go ahead and make this into a face. So we'll need a shape around these holes so that this can be some eyes, and give it a little bit more of a face here. And out on the side, we can give it a hand that can hold on to the end of our cable. And just so that he looks right, we should have a second hand over here. But I don't think I can wrap the cable all the way around the arms. So instead of straight area down there, we will give him some legs. And then we can end up wrapping our cable around the legs and plugging it into the hand so that when he's got his headphones in, he's going to have crazy eyes poking out, and his cable will go up to here. And when we take it off to use him, he'll still look like a little happy face guy. We can stand him up on our desk while we're not using him. So next time, we'll go through the design process of building our headphone holding happy face in TinkerCAD. We're going to build our happy little earbud holder design. Let's go ahead, move this guy aside, and we'll start fresh. Off you go. All right. So clearly we're going to need some cylinders, but I'm going to start by taking a cylinder set to hole, we're already set to hole, and creating the cylinders that we're going to need for the holes. These parts we have measurements for from our actual earbuds. So we need to make sure that these holes are going to match before we make the design that goes around them. So I'm going to go ahead and increase the sides all the way up. It's very important for the holes because while the edges of our outside here could be flat, they could be triangles, it could be anything you want, the inside of the hole has to match the shape that we're going to fit inside of it. And if it has too few sides, it's going to look like a polygon and not a cylinder. And these sides will make it much harder to fit a nice round object into this hole. So let's increase the number of sides. And then we are going to click on one of our corner handles so we can see both of our measurements. Forward, backward, and side to side. I'm going to click on one of these, and we're going to change it to 12.5. Since we made a measurement earlier of 12 millimeters, I want our hole to be just a tiny bit bigger. Let's do on our second number here, 12.5 as well. And now we have one hole that is just a half a millimeter bigger than the outside of our shape. Because the plastic can expand and contract, and it won't be exactly precise, we want our hole to be a little bit bigger. That way we are pretty sure that we can fit our shape in there, our earbuds in there, and not get them stuck. I'm going to need two of these, so let's duplicate this and move it over to the side. And then I'm going to need one more hole that is going to hold on to the end of my cable. That way it won't unravel. And that one, since the plug on headphones is 3.5 millimeters, I'm going to add a half a millimeter and make it 4. So let's go ahead and duplicate this one again. But on our third one, we're going to click our corner handle and change this to 4 and 4. There we go. Now we've got our shapes. They are exactly the size of holes that we need. We're going to use these guys as the eyes, and we're going to put this hole in his hand. So now we need to make the rest of the face. Let's go ahead and grab a solid cylinder, and I like making it nice and smooth, so I'm going to increase the number of sides. This is the outside, so it can look however you like. You can even design your shape to be a simple box rather than a face, but I'm going to make this guy because he's more fun. So now that I have these holes, and I know they're the right size, all I have to do is make this big enough to make it look like a face. So I don't have to worry about the exact size of this. Let's take our height and move it down. I'm going to go with 5 millimeters tall here so that my shape is not super thick. If it's too wide, then I won't be able, too tall, I won't be able to push the headphones through it. And I want to be able to put this in a bag or even my pocket maybe, so we don't want this to be too large. I'm going to go ahead and just stretch this out so it's big enough to fit both of my eye holes. And if I like how that looks, I want to click on this corner here and check the size. So it's 38 by 39, which means it's actually pretty small. If I have a ruler handy, it's much easier to figure out how big something is in real life. So it's almost 4 centimeters, since 10 millimeters in a centimeter, which is about 1.5 inches. So with my ruler in hand, I can see that this shape is going to be small enough that it'll really easily fit in a pocket or anything. In fact, I could even make him a bit larger. So now that I like the size of my face here, I'm going to give him a mouth. I don't think he needs any other features, but let's just give him a mouth by going down and grabbing the round roof. We can see that the round roof shape is the shape that I want, but it's not in the direction that I want it to be. So I'm going to need to go over here from the side and see the little rotate handles that float up above it. It'll be much easier to see if I use Fit to Selected Shapes to zoom into it. So now that I'm close by, I can see this little handle. Click on it, drag it over, keeping it inside the circle so I can snap it to 90 degrees. Now I've got a smile for this guy. I'm going to turn it into a hole. And we'll use the minus here to zoom out and put it in place. Looks a little bit big. I'll make his mouth smaller. That's cute. Okay. Next, he's going to need some limbs. He'll need a hand to hold on to this. We'll put a second hand on the other side so that he's symmetrical. And we'll make his legs so that we can wrap our cable around them. I'm going to select the cylinder that I already have on the work plane and duplicate it. So I can move it over to where the hand is going to be and just shrink it down. Since this part is also the aesthetics of the design, it's up to you what kind of shape you want his hand to be. It only needs to be large enough that we can cut this hole into it without breaking off of the edge there or something like that. Now I think this hole in this hand will work. We're going to make him an arm, and I'll do that going up here and using the box. So we'll take one side of our box, shrink it down, and then go up from the side and look at our up and down, or our top handle here, and we'll drag it just below the surface of our other shapes. So we'll make the arm 4 millimeters tall, while the head and the hands are 5. Now I've got an arm sticking out here, but it doesn't attach to him very well. So let's click on this arm from above, and I'm going to use the rotate handle and just turn it. We'll just turn it to the first notch, I think, 22.5. If you stay inside the circle, you can always turn it one notch at a time. It's much easier than if you go outside, you go 1 degree at a time. It's hard to go back to a setting you were at before because it doesn't remember what number you're on. So now that I have it tilted at an angle, I think that looks good. I'm going to take this entire arm and duplicate it on the other side so that he matches. So let's click on an empty space here, drag a box that touches the arm and the hand. I'll go back up here to my duplicate and repeat. And we'll move our duplicate shapes over to the other side. And we need to flip them over so that it's on the other side. So let's go ahead and click on mirror all the way up in the top right corner. And this will give you some handles that point you in which direction you're going to flip it. So you can see a little preview when I put it over the left and right arrow. That's going to flip it over left to right. It looks good. Now I'll just move it into place, and we have both of our arms. Now he doesn't need holes in both of his arms since we only have one end of our headphones, but I can leave them both in there just so that he's symmetrical, and then we can plug it in either side. All right, lastly, we're going to need some feet. And while he would now hold on to the ends of our headphones with his eyes and the other end with his hand, there's nowhere for the cable to go, so it would just be a big wad wrapped around him. So we're going to wrap it around his legs. That way he can keep this cord safe from tying itself in knots. Put a new box down here, and we'll look at it from the side once again, and drag this down until it's 4. You can also click on this and type in 4. And I will shrink it from the side so that it looks more like the arms. And we could have, since we already have this, we could have duplicated an arm and moved it over. We would just have to rotate it into position so that it looked like a leg. Since I've made this new leg, I'm going to go ahead and duplicate this, move it over to the side. And he's going to need some feet. Mostly because we need to make sure that the cable, once it's wrapped around his legs, won't slip right off the bottom. So we're going to need a shape that is wider. I could put a box down here, standing up. I think I will use this wedge shape. Let's drag this in. You can see that in the position it's in, it's already kind of looking like a shoe for him. So I'll just drag this down till it's about the same size, but it sticks up. That's maybe a little bit tall. We don't want a large point coming off of this to make it hard to put into a pocket or anything. So now we have a bit that's a little bit larger on the other side. I can go ahead and duplicate this and then move it over to the other foot. Now, just like the arms, I could have made the leg and foot all at once and then duplicated the entire thing. Now that we have all of our necessary parts, it's time to finally group them together. So I'm going to zoom out a little bit, click on an empty space near him, and drag the red box all the way around everything. And when we click on group, all of the holes are going to be cut out from all of the solid shapes. Let's click on group and make sure everything worked. Now we can see that my holes have cut all the way through. So you can see the same holes from the back. I can take a look at the back and make sure that nothing is sticking out the bottom. And make sure that all of my parts are firmly attached together. So as long as our solid shapes overlap, they will be joined into one single shape. Now that he's ready, we can go ahead and export him for print next time. See you then. So we are going to get our earbud holder ready for print. So let's double check that we don't have anything weird going on the back side, and that everything is joined together as one shape. Then I'm going to go ahead and go up to Export. And in here, I want to download only the selected shape. Since I have some other examples in here, I don't want to get them too. So we'll click on STL, which is the most common 3D model file. And we'll open up our slicer, which in this case is Cura. So we already have our printer and our type of plastic set up. We don't need to worry about custom settings because this is a very simple project to print. I'm going to open up our earbud holder and check him one more time. We can see that the bottom is highlighted blue, which means that it's resting on the floor. So it's going to stick to the floor of the printer. So that's good. And we can see that our shape doesn't have any overhangs. There's no red marks on it. So we don't have to worry about supports. If you check to generate supports, but there's no overhangs to support, that's fine too. The slicer will simply not add any supports because it can't find any place to add them. Now that we know this guy is ready to print, we can actually turn the layer height up to the highest number that we can get. This is going to make the individual layers thicker, which will make the number of layers we have to print less, so it'll make printing time faster. And we can do this because all of our shapes have straight up and down walls. Even though we have circles, we have only straight up and down shapes. We don't have any curves on the top. If you make a very thick, very tall layer height and you have a curve, then you'll see a little bit of a stair step. Let's click on slice and see this in your design. There we go. But because we have a straight up and down line here, you can see that it doesn't matter how thick each of the layers are, they're all going to be stacked directly on top of each other. Our default settings are for an infill of 20% here. So we can see that when I drag this down until we can see the inside of our piece, we're going to have a mostly hollow inside, and only 20% of it is going to be full of plastic. The orange lines represent infill lines. They're going to be drawing this grid pattern that will slightly fill in the inside so that when we get to our top, we have something here that we can add our top layer to. As we draw lines back and forth to fill in the top layer, we need something for them to rest on, and that is our grid underneath. We don't have to fill it in solid, so we don't have to take as much time filling each layer in, and we don't have to use up as much plastic. And this guy will still be pretty solid and strong with a grid inside of him to give him some structure. Now that we've taken a look at our layers and made sure that everything is good and nothing's going to fall apart, then we can save our G-code file and we'll be ready to print.